Picture a distant age when enormous statues towered beside crowded harbors and magnificent gardens rose above the desert like floating islands of green paradise. More than 2,000 years ago, travelers journeyed across continents and recorded stories about the most astonishing creations humanity had ever built. These legendary masterpieces became known as the Seven Wonders of the Ancient World. They were far more than beautiful monuments. Each wonder represented power, faith, wealth, and the incredible imagination of ancient civilizations. Kings devoted fortunes to their construction. Architects spent decades designing them. Thousands of laborers carried massive stones and precious materials across vast distances to complete projects that seemed impossible for their time. Today, people recognize these wonders through paintings, movies, books, and digital recreations. Yet the real tragedy is that nearly all of them have vanished forever. Out of the 7 ancient wonders, only the Great Pyramid of Egypt still survives. The rest disappeared beneath the sea, crumbled into dust, or were dismantled piece by later civilizations. How could monuments that once seemed eternal simply vanish from history? Why did humanity fail to protect such priceless achievements? The answer is hidden in centuries of war, earthquakes, fires, neglect, and human greed. This is the story of how some of the greatest creations ever built slowly disappeared from the face of the earth. To truly understand the greatness of these wonders, it is important to remember how different the ancient world was from modern society. There were no steel cranes, electric machines, or reinforced concrete structures. Every giant monument was built using human strength, primitive tools, and extraordinary determination. Workers spent years cutting marble from mountains. Heavy blocks weighing several tons were transported across rivers and deserts. Gold, ivory, bronze, and rare stones were brought from distant lands to decorate temples and statues. Every wonder demanded patience, wealth, and advanced engineering knowledge. But despite their magnificence, these structures depended on the survival of the civilizations that built them. Once kingdoms weakened and empires collapsed, their greatest monuments became vulnerable. Nature, warfare, and human ambition slowly destroyed what once appeared immortal. The story of the Colossus of Rhodes began after a fierce military conflict that changed the island forever. In 305 BC, the powerful commander Demetrius the Besieger attacked Rhodes with one of the largest siege forces of the ancient world. His army brought enormous war machines designed to crush cities. The most terrifying invention was the Helepolis, which means city destroyer. It was an enormous moving tower protected by iron plates and filled with deadly weapons. The people of Rhodes resisted the invasion for an entire year despite overwhelming odds. Eventually, Demetrius abandoned the campaign and left behind his military equipment. Instead of destroying the abandoned weapons, the citizens of Rhodes transformed victory into celebration. They sold the siege machines and used the money to create a gigantic monument dedicated to Helios, the sun god. The sculptor Shares was chosen to design the statue. The original idea was relatively modest, but the ambitions of the people quickly expanded. They demanded a monument twice as tall as originally planned. Shares accepted the challenge without fully understanding how dramatically the required materials would increase. Construction began in 292 BC and continued for 12 years. Workers created huge earth ramps around the structure to lift heavy bronze sections into place. When the ramps were finally removed, an enormous bronze figure stood above the harbor entrance. The Colossus reached around 33 meters in height. Inside the statue was a strong framework of iron and stone. Outside, polished bronze plates reflected sunlight across the sea. Sailors approaching Rhodes could see the shining giant from far away. Yet the monument's existence was tragically short. In 226 BC, a devastating earthquake struck the island. The violent shaking shattered the supports inside the statue's legs. The giant collapsed at the knees and crashed onto the ground. The once glorious symbol of victory became a broken ruin. For nearly 800 years, the fallen statue remained where it lay. Travelers still visited the ruins in amazement. Ancient writers claimed the statue's thumb alone was larger than many people. Its final destruction came in 653 AD, when Arab forces conquered Rhodes. The remaining bronze was cut apart and sold. According to historical accounts, hundreds of camels were needed to carry away the metal. The masterpiece disappeared forever, likely melted into coins and weapons. Today, no surviving fragment of the Colossus has ever been discovered. While the Colossus symbolized triumph, the Lighthouse of Alexandria represented humanity's greatest engineering achievement of its era. Built on the island of Pharos near Alexandria, Egypt, the lighthouse protected sailors for over 15 centuries. Construction began around 285 BC under the rule of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's former generals. The architect responsible for the project was Sostratus of Cnidus. Legend says the king demanded all credit for the structure, Sostratus secretly carved his own dedication beneath a layer of plaster. Years later, the plaster eroded away, revealing the true creator's name to future generations. The lighthouse stood more than 120 meters tall, making it one of the tallest structures in the ancient world. The base was square and housed guards and workers. The middle section featured 8 sides decorated with statues. The upper level was cylindrical and supported a massive fire visible from enormous distances. Huge bronze mirrors reflected the firelight far across the Mediterranean Sea. During daylight hours, smoke from the fire served as a guide for incoming ships. Maintaining the lighthouse required constant effort. Workers carried wood up a giant internal ramp using pack animals. Despite centuries of political change, Roman rule, and foreign invasions, the lighthouse continued functioning. Nature eventually became its greatest enemy. In 796 AD, a strong earthquake destroyed the upper portion of the tower and ruined its lighting system. Although attempts were made to repair the structure, it never fully recovered. Stories later emerged about a Byzantine spy who convinced local rulers that hidden treasure lay beneath the lighthouse foundations. Parts of the monument were dismantled during the search, weakening the building even further. The final destruction arrived during the 14th century, when 2 catastrophic earthquakes reduced the lighthouse to ruins. By the time the traveler Ibn Battuta visited Alexandria, the once magnificent tower had become an unstable wreck. Later, Sultan Ketbey built a fortress on the same site using stones from the lighthouse itself. The ancient wonder disappeared into the walls of a medieval castle. In 1994, underwater archaeologists discovered giant blocks and statue fragments beneath Alexandria Harbor. These remains are believed to belong to the legendary lighthouse. Among all the ancient wonders, none are more mysterious than the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Historians still debate whether the gardens truly existed or were simply legends created by ancient writers. According to tradition, King Nebuchadnezzar II built the gardens during the 6th century BC for his wife Amytis, who missed the green mountains of her homeland. Babylon was hot, dry, and dusty, so the king attempted to recreate a lush paradise in the middle of the desert. The gardens supposedly rose in multiple levels connected by grand stairways. Massive stone platforms supported deep soil where large trees and flowers could grow. Waterproof materials prevented leaking water from damaging the structure below. The most remarkable feature was the irrigation system. Water from the Euphrates River was carried upward using wheels and buckets operated by workers. Streams and waterfalls flowed downward through the terraces, creating a cool environment filled with greenery. For about 2 centuries, the gardens amazed visitors from across the ancient world. Alexander the Great himself was said to admire them after conquering Babylon. But after Alexander's death, Babylon declined. The irrigation systems failed. Trees withered beneath the burning sun. Floods weakened the clay foundations. Unlike stone pyramids, Babylonian structures were made largely from mud brick, which rapidly deteriorates without maintenance. Eventually, the gardens vanished completely beneath the desert sands. In the 20th century, archaeologist Robert Koldewey uncovered unusual ruins in Babylon that he believed belonged to the gardens. However, some modern scholars argue the gardens may actually have stood in the Assyrian city of Nineveh instead. Whether real or legendary, the Hanging Gardens disappeared without leaving clear physical evidence behind. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was among the most magnificent buildings of the ancient Greek world. More than a religious sanctuary, it functioned as a financial center, marketplace, and refuge for people seeking protection. Construction of the greatest version began around 550 BC under the sponsorship of King Croesus. Architects faced a dangerous challenge because the region experienced frequent earthquakes. To reduce damage from tremors, they built the temple on marshy ground designed to absorb shocks. The structure became enormous. 127 marble columns supported its roof. Inside stood priceless artworks created by famous sculptors and painters. For centuries, the temple flourished. Then disaster struck on the night of July 21st, 356 BC. A man named Herostratus deliberately set fire to the temple in search of immortality through destruction. Flames consumed the roof, and intense heat shattered the marble interior. Legend claims Alexander the Great was born on the very same night. Years later, Alexander offered to finance reconstruction if his name appeared on the temple. The citizens cleverly refused, saying it was inappropriate for one god to build a temple for another. The rebuilt temple survived for centuries until changing religions and invasions sealed its fate. Gothic raiders damaged the sanctuary during attacks on Ephesus. Later, Emperor Theodosius banned pagan worship across the Roman Empire. The abandoned temple became a quarry. Marble blocks were removed for churches and palaces. Over time, mud and water buried the ruins beneath the landscape. Today, only a single reconstructed column marks the site of one of the greatest temples ever built. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus was built from grief, ambition, and royal pride. After the death of King Mausolus in 353 BC, his wife Artemisia ordered construction of an extraordinary tomb that would surpass all others. The monument combined several architectural traditions into one design. A giant marble platform supported rows of columns. Above them rose a pyramid-shaped roof crowned by a marble chariot carrying statues of Mausolus and Artemisia. The structure became so famous that the ruler's name created a new word. Since then, monumental tombs have been called mausoleums. Unlike several other wonders, the mausoleum survived for nearly 1,000 years. Eventually, earthquakes damaged its columns and roof. By the medieval period, the ruins were dismantled by Crusader knights who used the stones to strengthen nearby fortifications. Today, only scattered ruins remain at the original site, while several sculptures survive inside museums. The statue of Zeus at Olympia was one of the most breathtaking artistic achievements of the ancient world. Created by the sculptor Phidias around 435 BC, the giant statue stood inside the temple of Zeus. The seated god towered nearly 15 meters high. Ancient visitors claimed that if Zeus had stood upright, his head would have broken through the roof. Phidias used an extraordinary technique involving gold and ivory layered over a wooden frame. Zeus sat upon a richly decorated cedar throne covered in precious stones and carvings. In one hand he held the goddess Nike, symbolizing victory. In the other stood a royal scepter crowned with an eagle. Priests carefully maintained the ivory by covering it with olive oil to prevent cracking. Pools of oil reflected light inside the temple, making the statue appear almost supernatural. For centuries, pilgrims traveled great distances to witness the monument. The fall of the pagan world eventually doomed the statue. Emperor Theodosius outlawed ancient religious practices and closed temples throughout the empire. The statue was later moved to Constantinople in an attempt to save it. That effort failed. In 475 AD, a massive fire destroyed the palace where the statue was stored. The wooden frame burned, gold melted, and ivory turned to ash. One of humanity's greatest artistic creations vanished forever. Only descriptions and ancient coins preserve its memory. Among all 7 wonders, only the Great Pyramid of Khufu still stands today. Its survival came from one important advantage: simplicity. Unlike statues made from bronze or temples decorated with gold, the pyramid consisted mainly of millions of enormous stone blocks. It contained no delicate systems, wooden interiors, or precious decorations easy to steal. Its massive weight and solid design allowed it to survive earthquakes, invasions, and centuries of weather. While the other wonders disappeared through fire, war, neglect, or theft, the pyramid endured. The lost wonders of the ancient world remind us that even humanity's greatest achievements are fragile against time. Kingdoms rise and collapse. Empires vanish. Monuments once believed eternal eventually become ruins buried beneath sand and water. Yet their stories continue inspiring the modern world. Archaeologists still search for hidden fragments beneath oceans, deserts, and ancient cities, hoping to uncover new clues about these legendary creations. Perhaps that is the true power of the wonders. Even after disappearing, they continue to awaken curiosity, imagination, and the desire to understand the forgotten past. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysteries of the ancient world, make sure to subscribe to Forbidden Fathoms, turn on notifications, and join us for more forgotten legends, hidden histories, and unbelievable mysteries waiting to be uncovered.